going to start with investigating websites. And I like beginning with websites because websites kind of open a door to a whole bunch of other avenues of investigation. And we're going to talk about some of the approaches to looking at websites that will apply to other types of things we might look at. Tomorrow, when I talk about social media accounts, we'll refresh some of the ideas. And then we're going to look at the ways of connecting websites together. Sometimes you encounter a website and you want to figure out who's running it. You want to figure out the motivations, the goals, and you also want to see if perhaps it's part of a network. And then after we do websites, we're going to look at digital ads, which I think is probably the most unexplored area of digital investigations, which is why I'm really happy to be able to do that with you. All right, so let me share my screen and bring up some slides for today. And actually, before I do that, I just want to share with everyone here in the chat. This is a link to the slides for the session today. And so you are able to open those slides, and you will always have access to these slides as well. They will always be there for you. And so I encourage you to bookmark them because, we have 3 hours together and I'm going to cover a lot. There's going to be a lot of information, and I'm sure there are going to be moments where maybe you feel a little bit overwhelmed. And I'm here to answer questions. I will be taking a look at the chat as we're going through. We'll have time for questions, but I also want you to think about, saving these slides, coming back to them to refresh, maybe sometime next week, sometime soon, but to keep them as a resource. All right, so there's today's slides. You have the link that's there in the chat, and I encourage you to open it up because there are a couple things that I would like you to install if you don't already have these. So I encourage you to use the Chrome web browser for today's session with me because there are 2 extensions that would be really good for you to have installed. I'm going to demonstrate these a little bit for you. And if you want to sort of practice along with me, you'll want to have them if you don't already use them. Or you can also install them at another time and consult the slides for when to use them. But the CrowdTangle link checker, excellent browser extension, and the Wayback Machine extension, recently updated, also really excellent and really useful. And I just want to note that for our second session on investigating ads, you're going to want to create a free account at wellknown.dev. This will help you with ads investigations, and I'll remind you to do that when we get to that session. So those are some of the things you're going to want to have here, and I do have the links to those browser extensions in the slides. So if you open up the slides, you can click and get those installed right away. Last thing I want to mention before we dive into our work is that there are 2 free resources that may be helpful to you. Building on the things I'm going to cover, perhaps your other speakers are going to cover. The verification handbook for disinformation and media manipulation. It's current. I don't believe we actually have a Chinese translation yet, but if someone was interested in working with us on that, that would be great. It is available in English, Arabic, and a few other languages. And this is chapters and case studies from around the world of doing this kind of work. And on the right is a Google Doc where I have different resources and tools that you might be interested in testing out. So those are there in the slides if you ever want to look at them. Okay, so let's get started. A website seems like kind of an obvious thing. We visit them all the time, right? We create them, we post to them, many of us for our jobs. But when we're in the middle of an investigation, we need to think a little bit differently. And this is one of the things that I'm going to continue to emphasize today, and especially in the session tomorrow, where I'm going to talk more about the concept of mindset, sort of how you think about doing the work of digital investigations. And it starts here with websites in the sense that I just want to emphasize that you need to think about it differently. You need to get into the mind frame of being really strategic and thorough. It's not just a casual website you're visiting. This is a website that is important to you for research, for reporting, for an investigation. And so we want to think about being very thorough and kind of methodical as we go through a website. And so these are some of the things that I would suggest you think about doing when you're visiting a website. One is, if it's not a huge government website with lots of pages, you should be able to visit pretty much most or all of the website. You should be able to click on all of the menus and visit the pages. You should be able to scroll to the bottom of the page. Does it list a company? Does it have copyright information that's notable? Can you click on links and see, is it sending you to other parts of the website or to other websites? And so the idea is to be kind of complete, to not leave anything out, because my experience, and in talking with a lot of other journalists, researchers, and other people, is that, you know, it's the smallest little thing on a page somewhere that can be the point of connection, and that can be the point of inspiration, where you realize, oh, wait, this is owned by this company, which connects to these other things. And so we want to make sure that we haven't left anything out. And in addition to kind of looking at all of the content that's there, one of the things that we also have to think about is what isn't there. Most websites will have an about page, but if a website doesn't tell you anything, doesn't say who works on it, doesn't say what company is there, doesn't give you address or other contact information, that is just as interesting and potentially important a clue as having information. So it's sometimes the lack of information that's really important and essential for us. One of the things that I always emphasize is if there is a copyright page, a terms and conditions page, a privacy page, things that are kind of boring legal words and statements, you always want to visit those, because sometimes they put some information on the about page and different information when it comes to the legal requirements for privacy or other things. And that's really important. And then, you know, we have a lot of fact checkers here. Of course, one of the things as fact checkers that's important is, you know, to read articles and analyze those articles and the claims and the evidence to support those claims. And so when we're analyzing a website, you know, we want to pay attention to articles. We want to pay attention to, you know, the author names and photos. We might want to take some of the content in an article and, you know, copy a sentence or two and put that into a search engine like Google or Baidu or others and see, you know, has this same content appeared somewhere else? Is this content original? Is it stolen? You know, these again seem like really obvious things to do, but if we are not in the right mindset, if we are not thinking about taking a website and going through every piece of it that we possibly can, we may forget to search the author photo. We may forget to see if content has been stolen. And of course, websites, as I mentioned, can be a doorway into other things, because often websites list social media accounts. You know, they link to other people's websites. They link to other content. They embed videos from YouTube pages or other places. So all of these things are really important pieces of content and avenues for investigation. We want to be thorough. We want to be really strategic, and we want to be deliberate about the things we're doing as we're going through a website. And so I'm going to use an example from the Philippines. Later, I have an example from Malaysia. So trying to pick some different countries to just sort of pull examples from. And I think you'll find, you know, wherever your focus is, you may see some of the same things there. So this is a website kind of focused on the Philippines. And I'm actually going to kind of visit this live because I want to sort of see and go through this together as if I would, you know, visiting a website and kind of analyzing it. So here is the website Maharlika News. And, you know, when you visit it, one of the things that we see right away that I mentioned, of course, it has a bunch of menus and it has, you know, pages and options here. So we would want to visit these sections and understand what's there. And also at the top here, we see they have an About Us page. And right away, we also see they invite people to submit a news article. So that tells us something about the site, that it is potentially publishing content just from users, from random people, right? So the content that we see on the website might actually, you know, have varying degrees of quality. And we see they say advertise with us. So they're also clearly, this is a website that's trying to make money. And if we scroll, we see it has, you know, a lot of articles. And in fact, one of the things that always struck me when I first looked at this was that they have articles not just about, you know, the Philippines, they have articles about Canada, they have articles about the world, they have articles about entertainment and sports. And it seems like, wow, you know, they really publish a lot of things. How is it that this website is able to publish so many things? And if we just kind of pick, a random article here, we might sort of get some answers to that. So we go to the article page, and just scrolling it, we see it seems to be a pretty detailed article. It has a lot of photos. It has a lot of information. Seems to be, some pretty significant reporting. We've got an author name here. And here's kind of a red flag that we can see right away. So it says the journalist, her name is Stephanie Dubois, and it says she is a journalist with CBC News. Well, if you remember, we're not on CBC News, we're on Maharlika News. And so right away, we can see perhaps an answer, and you can see right on the bottom here, it says credit belongs to cbc.ca. This is the public broadcaster in Canada, like the BBC for Canada. And so they have basically taken the whole article, they have stolen it, and the photos. They've even stolen the journalist's photo. And at the very end, they've sort of said, hey, credit belongs to cbc.ca, which is, pretty much universally around the world, that would not be acceptable in terms of copyright law, right? And so that sort of gives us an answer. How do they have so much content? Well, it seems at least on one occasion, they have stolen it and copied it from somewhere else. So that's kind of interesting. We see on the top here, they describe themselves as the #1 most engaged information website for Filipino Canadians in Canada. So it tells us who their target market is. And if we go to the About Us page, again, this is sort of, they're talking about how much traffic they get. They're talking about buying advertising, but they're not telling us who they are. They don't say it on the bottom. They don't give us an easy way to know the people or the company who are running this site. And so right away, that's kind of an interesting thing. Is it deliberate? Did they forget? We don't really know yet, but it's worth looking at. And one of the things that's also interesting is, they're inviting people to give them a rating on Google, so you could potentially go and see what ratings they've received. And one of the things that I missed the first time I visited this site, because I maybe wasn't as thorough as I should have been, is that this link right here is quite interesting. It's labeled as Filipino Business Directory, join today. It actually opens up a whole other new part of the website where they have a whole feature of businesses that are posting their information. And this is really easily missed. It's just this small link over here on the right-hand side. You could easily scroll past it. And so I just emphasize that again, if you are trying to figure out information about the site and you are missing things that you want, you need to go back and look and make sure you have clicked everywhere you can and looked at everywhere you can. It seems like an obvious thing, but it's very easy to miss. Now, one of the other things that I like to do when investigating a website, aside from visiting it, right, is I like to take the domain name of the website. So in this case, Maharlika News. And I like to take that, put it in quotes, and just search that in a search engine. So instead of bringing up the website itself, this can sort of tell you, well, what do other people have to say about this website? How many pages from this website have been indexed in a search engine? In this case, it's Google, and there are a lot of results. And as we scroll down, we see, a lot of the results are coming from the website itself, which is completely something normally you'll see. We've been able to find a Facebook page that appears to belong to them. But there is also a Wikipedia page here called Fake News in the Philippines, and Maharlika News is listed on that page. And so again, a very simple thing. We put the name of the website in quotes and we search to see what else is available and what people are saying about it. And in this case, we find an indication that it may have at least one incident of spreading fake news. And so, nothing I've shown you so far is particularly technical or surprising, I'm sure, right? But we're getting into sort of the mindset and the approach, and we're thinking about analyzing the website itself, but we're also thinking about outside the website. We're thinking about, what do other people say about the website? What other information points to or describes this website? Because those are sort of the two sides of what we're looking at. We're thinking about what is there for us in the website itself and what other data we can dig up. And we're also thinking about what else is out there already about this website that can inform us about what's really going on with it. And so you see there in the slide, what are other people saying? We can put it in quotes and look at it. So the next thing that is really important when investigating a website is what's called a who is search. Now, I'm sure Some of you are probably already familiar with whois searches. This is a pretty fundamental technique and approach for fact checkers, for journalists. You encounter a website. You would like to understand basic information about the domain. So in this case, the domain name is Maharlika News. And if we want to find out information about when that domain name was purchased, when it was registered, to see if there might be a person's name or company name or other contact information available, we can do what's called a whois search. And the background on this is that every website domain that is purchased and owned, there is kind of a central registry for it. And so we can run what is called a whois search in order to pull up information from that central database. Now, there are a bunch of different whois tools, and there may be some that are very specific and useful in the regions where all of you are. I'm going to use two here, whoisology.com and whoxy.com. Maybe you're already familiar with them. I'm going to use them because they both have a free version that tends to be useful. Every tool that I'm going to show you today and also tomorrow has at the very least a free version that you can use. Some of them also offer additional data or information for pay, but at the very least you get some decent and good free information. And so what we want to do is we want to say Maharlika News won't tell us who runs the site on the website. So let's see if we can actually find out by doing a whois search. So the first one we're going to use is whoisology.com. We just put Maharlika News into that search bar, and here is the information we get. So we sort of come up empty, and this again may be something that you experience and that you're familiar with, that you might do a search on a domain name, and the registrant contact has something along the lines of registration private, or maybe it says domainprivacy.com, or whois privacy LLC. There is, instead of a person's name or a company name, you get the name of a domain privacy service. So when you purchase a domain, you can pay a few extra dollars and you can hide your name from being publicized there. And that doesn't mean the person is up to no good, just for privacy reasons, right? When I buy a domain name, I usually pay for the privacy too, because I don't necessarily want the whole world to see my phone number and my email address and my home address, right? And so a lot of times you will do this search and you will see a result that gives you an indication that someone has paid for privacy. And so this is kind of an empty result for us. It's unfortunate, but it's very common. So it's important to see that. So we could try another service. We can try whoxy.com. And in this case, we get lucky because whoxy does tell us that the current registrant information is this domain privacy service. That's the most recent data available. But whoxy is one of these services that is taking snapshots of domain registration records all the time. And so what often happens is somebody buys a domain name, and when they buy it, maybe they don't have the money or they don't see the reason to pay for privacy. And so maybe it's a few days or a few weeks or months or years. They keep that registration information public. But maybe at a certain point they decide, you know what, I want to hide this now. And years later, they decide to pay for privacy. Well, that whole time, a service like whoxy or others is taking snapshots and capturing that old historical information so that when we do a search, we might get lucky like this. And in this case, what we find is that the domain record, in this case, I believe it was back when it was first registered in, I think, 2016, is in, we have a name, Mark Rule Uabo. We have a company, Creative Mark Interactive. We have an email address, and of course, we have information that he is in Canada. So this is really helpful. Now, I want to give you a caution on this. And this is a caution, just like the importance of mindset, you're going to hear me say a lot. You're going to hear me say this caution a lot as well, which is that tools are helpful to us, but tools don't do all the work. And we can never put 100% trust in tools and tool results. We have to gather information, gather evidence, start to combine it to see if it all makes sense, if it aligns. And the reason that I give you that warning is that there is no requirement that you have to put accurate information in a domain registration. You could register it with my name. You could register it with a fake email address or a fake telephone number. Sometimes people do that, but oftentimes they use their real information. And so it's important to know that whatever result you get can be useful, but could also be a dead end. Okay, so in this case, it looks encouraging because we've got a name, a company, and an email, but we would obviously want to do more to confirm that. Okay, however, this is a good start. We go from having no information on Maharlika News to all of a sudden, look at this. We've got someone, a name, and a company. So we can keep going from there. Okay, one of the things that we can do is we can start to see information about where this website is hosted. Every website is made up of a combination of text files and image files. Those all have to be hosted somewhere on a server, on an actual physical computer, so that when I type in maharlikanews.com, the web browser goes to that server and pulls up all the files for maharlikanews.com for me to look at. And sometimes that server is hosting other websites that might also be owned by the same people, okay? And this again is me giving you a caution, which is that just because you see a bunch of websites all hosted on the same server, on the same IP address, it does not instantly mean they are all owned by the same person or the same company. And so the rule that I like to give for this is that, the fewer the number of websites on the same server, the more interesting it is. Okay, so if you get a result and you've got a website and there's only 5 other websites hosted on the same server, and you look at the domain names and maybe they're about similar topics, they have something in common, that's a good indication that you should spend more time looking into them. But you're often going to find cases where there are hundreds or thousands of websites all on the same server, and that's typically not going to be very helpful. So this is a website that we're going to use later as well, called dnslytics.com. And what we're able to do is a domain report where we can see the server that it's hosted on, and also see if other websites are hosted on it. So here is what the result looks like for DNSlytics. It tells us the IP address, so that's the 138.197. That's basically like the mailbox on the internet where this website lives. And it's helpful. It tells us, hey, it's used by 3 domains. It's hosted on a server in Canada, and 3 other websites, 3 websites total, I should say, are on this server. So remember our rule, that's a low number, so that's interesting, that's encouraging. And we can click on that, and here is the result for us. And again, you can get this for free. So 1, we see Maharlika News. 2, we see another website called adenitonews.com. So we've now got 2 websites with words that are kind of references to the Philippines or Filipino culture, and also the word news in the domain. So right there, it's sort of like, those 2 might have something together. And then the third one there is qprint.com, which seems not as the same, but it would be worth looking at. And so at this point, we've gone from one website that didn't tell us anything about who owned it to information about a potential person, a potential company, and now 2 other websites that could potentially also be run by the same people, right? And so, this has helped us kind of get a little bit closer to it. But why don't we take a quick look here at Adenito News, right? We would want to visit it. And let's just see what we get here. This looks a little bit familiar, right? The design of the website is pretty familiar. If we go back, you remember Maharlika News? Let's go back to the original one here, not on our business directory. Pull that up. So here's the template for Maharlika News. Here's the template for Adenito News. It's a Philippine news feature, so similar connection to the Philippines. We can scroll down. We can see, they've got a lot of content, just like the other folks here. And so, they're on the same server. They have a similar topic focus. They use the exact same design template. So this is where we're starting to stack our evidence, right? Where we're starting to find things that are connected between them. And, we can continue to go along here and browse this site, but at the end of the day, one of the things that you'll see is if you visit this site is it does actually list Creative Mark interactive. So if we go down to the very bottom here, we can see maintained by Creative Mark Interactive in the footer of the website, right? It didn't have that on Maharlika News, but it has it here. And so now we've got a Who Is record for Maharlika News, connecting it to the information at the bottom of Adanito News. They're hosted on the same server. They use the same design template. They have similar content focus. We're getting our list, right? We use tools, but the tools didn't make the decision. We've used the tools to assist us in connecting these websites together. Okay, so that was our kind of first session through here of how do we do basic content analysis of visiting a website to figure out what's going on with it. How do we search online to see what else might be out there about the website? And then how do we do Who Is and IP address searches to start to connect who might be running the site and find other sites that are also linked to it. And so, you know, we did a combination of thinking and then a combination of tools. And the two things together is really the work that we're talking about. It is about knowing which tools can help give information and potentially answers to interesting questions, and then understanding how to form all of that together to start to make conclusions. And that work is, as I say, you know, that's at the fundamental of what digital investigations are all about. So let's continue here with, you know, with analyzing websites. We've looked on the website, we've looked a little bit around the website, but one of the things about websites, of course, is they have, are supposed to have an audience. So how do we analyze like the social engagement that a website's getting? How do we analyze the audience, where it's coming from? You know, how long did they stay on the site? How many people visit the site? And then finally, how do we connect even more websites together? We've looked now at IP address. That's not the only method. I've got another one I'm going to show you, and then yet another one on top of that when we go into investigating ads. So by the end of today, you're going to have a bunch of things, a bunch of approaches for you to be able to take one website and see if it is connected to a much larger network, which is something that you often find to be the case. So here's another website we're going to use as our example. It is thedailycentury.net. I'm going to show you two tools here, okay? So the first one is buzzsumo.com. This has a free version, but I want to give you a caution right now, okay? The caution is that BuzzSumo gives you very few free searches. You only get, I think, maybe 2 or 3 per month, okay? So if you're practicing as I'm doing these things, I would suggest that you don't use one of your free searches while we do this practice. So save that for when you need it for an investigation. And then the second thing is the CrowdTangle web browser extension. I'm going to show you how that is useful in terms of tracking the social engagement and potentially also identifying, you know, Facebook pages and Facebook groups and Instagram accounts and other things that might be connected to a particular website. Okay, so let's talk about thedailycentury.net and buzzsumo.com here. I'm going to do this live as well. But I have always, when I do a live demo, I still have the step-by-step instructions in the slides. So I don't want you to worry that, you know, you're losing, you know, the information because I'm doing it live. It is going to be available to you when you go and look at the slides. All right, so we're going to do the Daily Century. Let's grab that one, thedailycentury.net. So with BuzzSumo, this is a tool that is built for marketers. And the idea here with this content analyzer is to tell us what is the most popular, see, it's telling me I reached my monthly limit, so I'm gonna have to log in. We're curious here, what is the most popular content on social media? And it's not every social media network. I'm sure a lot of you Chinese social media networks are really important for you. These are Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Reddit. So it's not going to be useful in every case, but it's something that you'll want to know exists. And the idea is for this to tell us the most popular content on those social networks in the last period of time. So with the free version, it gives you the most popular social content from the last 6 months. In this case, because I'm signed in, it's giving me the past year, but let me just go back to 6 months to make it fair. And here's what we see. We see a very clear pattern here. And the pattern is that this website is all about Facebook, right? This may be familiar, where you see websites that are publishing content, it's all about getting people to share it and engage with it on Facebook. And this website seems to be doing really well, doesn't it? I mean, you have the top story published on June 11th, so not that long ago. It got almost 400,000 Facebook engagements. So that means almost 400,000 likes, shares, comments all together. That's pretty good. And so if you want to quickly get a sense of, the type of content that a website is publishing, how much engagement that content is getting across, these sort of more, US founded social networks, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and Reddit, you're able to do that really easily with BuzzSumo. And so this is where we get, a bunch of results. And here's the combination that I want to emphasize. So BuzzSumo can give you this sort of top line picture. Show me the most popular content from the whole website over the last 6 months on social media, right? But what if we're interested in, one story in particular? What if we want to understand how one story managed to get so much engagement, let's say in this case on Facebook? This is where the CrowdTangle browser extension comes in. And I'm just moving my mouse, if you can see it here, to where that is. I have a bunch of browser extensions. I'm a bit of a browser extension addict. CrowdTangle is definitely one of my favorites. And CrowdTangle is super useful because if you are on a specific article, a specific link, it will give you data from Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Reddit about that particular article, right? And just to give you a sense, if you click on the CrowdTangle browser extension, the first time it's going to ask you to log into Facebook. Don't be alarmed by this. It is a tool that is owned by Facebook, so it is 100% safe for you to sign in. So please sign in with your personal Facebook account, and then you'll be able to do exactly what I'm going to show you right now, which is to take one article and look at the social engagement for it. Okay, so here's what happens if we go to an article on the Daily Sentry and we click on the CrowdTangle browser extension. It's going to pop up this box that you can see here, and what it's telling us is the public Facebook pages and the public Facebook groups where this particular article has been shared. So it is not telling you where individual people have posted this article on their personal profile. Facebook doesn't give you that data. It's not telling you if the article was posted in private groups. Facebook doesn't share that data either. It's showing you the public pages and the public groups and how many interactions they received and the dates when it was posted there. And one of the things that stands out to me, if we see here, we've got, of course, the Daily Sentry's own Facebook page posting it. That's not a surprise. But we also see there's another one there called the News Spy, which seems to have the exact same kind of logo design and has also posted this article. And if we sort of, keep scrolling down the different Facebook pages that we can see have posted it, we start to see that, there are Facebook pages that have posted this same article multiple times. And so, one of the things that we're looking for are patterns. If you run a website and you have a Facebook page, you're going to post consistently content from your website on your Facebook page, right? And if you run a bunch of Facebook pages and you own a couple of websites, you're probably going to post content from those websites across all of your Facebook pages. And so if we see a pattern whereby, one article from one website is posted several times by, the same page or the same group of pages, we will start to wonder, is there a connection here? It's safe to assume that the one called the Daily Sentry is probably linked. We would want to verify it, but probably linked. But what about these other ones like Thinking PH? What about the other one there, the News Spy or Positive? In those cases, we would want to visit the Facebook pages and see if they have a pattern of posting content from this page. And this applies really on any social network related to a website. You're getting a section later today about Chinese social media. Well, you would look for the same kinds of things, right? If you're seeing a website posted consistently on WeChat from the same, WeChat account or what have you, you would obviously start to wonder, are they a fan or is there a connection? And this is where you would start to dig deeper. So spotting patterns, understanding engagement, spotting patterns, and using that to move and try to find more connections from a website to social media, that's one of the fundamental approaches that we want to think about. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about social engagement. Let's talk a little bit about the web traffic and the audience. How do we find out information about, how many people visit a website, where do they come from, that kind of thing. A tool that has a good free level is called SimilarWeb. And you can go and for free, just like put in any website and it will give you the last few months of data for free. One warning that I have to give you is that a lot of these tools tend to have a bias towards, the United States, towards Europe. This is a common thing because a lot of these tools are built by people in those countries or regions, and they tend to analyze more things from there. SimilarWeb is an Israeli company, so they do tend to have maybe a little bit more of a global mentality, but it is possible that you go and they don't have good data for a site you're looking for, whether it's in Taiwan or Mongolia. But it's always worth checking, okay? Because if they do have data, you can actually learn a surprising amount. So let's just look at this first page here. It gives you like the ranking around the world of where a particular website ranks, and it will also tell you within a country. So in this case, we've got a website in the Philippines. They've got a lot of data for it, so that's pretty good. We can see that it got about 500,000 visits in the most recent month that they had data for. Not bad. People who visited the site tended to visit more than 2 pages per session. So when they arrive at the site, they tend to not just read one article and leave. They might read one article and click to another one as well. And here is the traffic breakdown. So we can see from the last 3 months, they had a pretty bad April, but May and June have been much better. So this is where, you can start to get data where if, for example, you're writing a fact check on a website and you're trying to understand, has this fact check been read by a lot of people? Is this a website that attracts a big audience? SimilarWeb and CrowdTangle and BuzzSumo might be tools that you use to start to estimate the audience and the impact of a particular claim, right? So we can see the traffic. We can also see its distribution around the world. Philippines, #1, United States, UAE, Saudi Arabia. These things make sense, right? Because 1, Philippines, you expect to be #1, big Filipino community in the United States. And then you have a lot of Filipinos who are working in the UAE and who are working in Saudi Arabia and Qatar, right? So it sort of makes sense. Sometimes, however, you might have a website that's claiming, to be focused on a particular region of the world, and the audience comes from somewhere else completely. That might be a red flag because it's a strange pattern, right? And so when you're looking at this data, you want to think about, does it make sense? Everything I learned about the website, the data that I'm seeing here on SimilarWeb, or the data that I'm seeing on BuzzSumo, does it make sense? Always be ready to question that. You question what you're seeing and question the assumptions that you might make. And here's another one that's, tends to be really important and really useful, which is it's telling you where SimilarWeb sees the traffic for this website coming from. Some websites are really big on social media. The Daily Sentry, the one we're looking at, look at this. Almost 90% of its audience comes from social media, and I would bet 90% of that is probably Facebook based on what we saw, right? Or 90% plus. So this case, it's pretty straightforward. In other cases, it might have a more evenly balanced audience. But just, 2 things that I want to mention to you when you look at this. The first is, if you see that they're getting a decent amount of traffic from email, you should see if they have newsletters and you should sign up for those, right? Because this is obviously something that is driving traffic and you should wonder what's in there. Sometimes there is a difference between the content that gets published publicly on a website and the content that they send out in an email newsletter to their most hardcore audience that is not public, right? So think about that. The second thing is if you notice there is a category labeled direct. So what this is supposed to represent are people who go to their web browser and type in thedailysentry.net and go direct to the website, or maybe they bookmarked it and they go direct. They don't get referred by Facebook. They don't follow a link from another website. They don't get an email newsletter. They go right to thedailysentry.net. If this is a place where you have to understand that whenever SimilarWeb is unable to accurately categorize to their satisfaction where traffic came from, they just put it in direct. So if you see a really high direct percentage, that could be suspicious. It could be that they have traffic that SimilarWeb is having trouble identifying. That could mean that they're up to some tricky things to increase their traffic, or it could just mean SimilarWeb wasn't able to get good data for that website. So keep an eye on direct. If it's a website that really doesn't seem to have a dedicated audience, that doesn't seem to really be connecting and building one, then a high direct percentage doesn't really make sense. So again, we think about what we know and what we see, and does the data in front of us align with that or not? Okay, so we've walked through some of the content analysis. We did who is, we did IP. We've now talked about traffic and engagement. Now, the sort of last big piece here for investigating websites is about connecting sites together, okay? And let me just actually take a sip of water here. By all means, please have a sip of tea or water or whatever you have. Delicious, okay, wonderful. All right, so we're gonna be looking at two different types of Google tools here that are gonna be useful to us when we're trying to connect websites together, okay? So the first one is Google AdSense, which is a huge ad network around the world, where if you are a website publisher, you can sign up for that program, and you're able to actually place ads on your website and earn money. So that's open, and if you meet Google's rules, you're in, you get ads, you get some money. The second one is Google Analytics. This is also a free thing. If you want to measure the traffic coming to your website, well, Google Analytics is a free and pretty powerful tool that enables you to do that. And here's why I'm talking about the two of these. When you sign up for Google AdSense and install it on your site, when you sign up for Google Analytics and you install it on your site, in each case, you get a unique ID, okay? You get a unique ID linked to your AdSense account. It's called a publisher ID. And you get a unique Google Analytics ID. And the beautiful thing is that lots of people use Google AdSense, lots of people use Google Analytics, and when they use it, those unique IDs are inserted in the pages of their website, okay? And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you how to visit a website, how to identify if there is a Google AdSense and or a Google Analytics ID, or a tag as it's often referred to as, in the website. And then I'm gonna show you how to take that unique ID and see if it's on other websites. So, basically, if I have 5 websites, I'm probably gonna have one Google AdSense account and one Google Analytics account that's gonna enable me to manage all 5 websites. All the ad money goes into one account. I can go into Google Analytics and look at the traffic for all 5 of my websites. And because that's really helpful and convenient, and also, lucrative in terms of earning money, you do find that people tend to reuse the same Google AdSense account ID and the same Google Analytics account ID across their websites. And some of them just aren't aware that we can go and find this in their source code and connect it together. The really smart actors know that people like me go around teaching this technique, and maybe they sign up for 5 different AdSense accounts and they sign up for 5 different analytics accounts. So it's not perfect, right? But I can tell you, there are so many times where we are able to connect websites together doing this. And so I'm going to show you how to do it right now. And, again, I'm going to show some of this live, but I absolutely, in the slides, have a step-by-step guide for you of how you can do this, okay? So you can follow what I'm doing But don't worry, because if you miss it and you need to remember it, you can go back to the slides. All right, so here is the method that I'm going to show you here. And let me also just give you a little hint. The work that we're doing right now about understanding in particular Google AdSense is going to be super, super helpful in our next session about investigating ads, okay? So we're gonna talk more about these kind of publisher IDs in investigating ads. I'm gonna show you an additional way to connect them together on top of what I'm showing you now. So you're gonna have a whole menu of options for you. So here's the thing that we're gonna do. I'm gonna show you how to look at a web page's source code. This is not technical, don't worry. And when we get that source page open, we will do two different kinds of searches. We will look within the page to see if there is a U, A, and a dash, because UA dash is the start of every unique Google Analytics code. So we'll search on the page to see if we find that letter, those letters, that combination, and maybe we'll find an analytics code. And we're also search for PUB dash, because that is how the unique publisher ID for AdSense starts, okay? If we find any of those, then we can use a few sites built with Spy on Web and our friends at DNSlytics, who we already use, to see if they recognize other sites using those, okay? And so this is gonna be the thing that I'm gonna show you how to do. If you're thinking right now, this sounds complicated, this is confusing, that's okay, it's totally cool. You're gonna see how I do it, and you're gonna realize it's actually very straightforward. And after you practice it a couple of times, you don't even think about it anymore. It's just gonna be the most natural thing, like waking up and brushing your teeth. Every website you look at, you're gonna be like, I'm gonna go look for a publisher ID. If you're a weirdo like me, at least that's what you will be doing. All right, so why don't we test this out? So we've got our friends at thedailycentury.net. Right? So let's go back to the dailycentury.net. Let's open it up. Dailycentury.net. Okay, here we are back on our friend's website. Okay, so what I typically go to, not necessarily the home page, so I'll open up an article page here. So here we are, we're on the article page. There are two ways to view the source code on a web page. The one really easy way is to just right click with your mouse, or to hit Control on a Mac, if you're on a keyboard, and open up the menu. So if you right click, you get this menu, and we have an option near the bottom. It says View Page Source. That's what we want to do. We want to view page source. Another way to do it is to go up, if you're in Chrome on a Mac, so on a PC, you probably want to right click. If you're in Chrome on a Mac, we can go from view to developer and view source. Both of these options are in the slides, okay? So let's click on view source, and here we go. We get, you know, a whole mess of code here. And so this is probably confusing to a lot of people. And that's why instead of scrolling through the whole thing, looking for UA dash and looking for pub dash, we do what's called a find on the page, which you're probably familiar with. So on a Mac, you can do Apple F, and it opens up this little box here to search, or you can go to the edit menu and find. So edit, find, or Apple Find. Again, I described this in the slides. So do you remember what we were looking for? We were looking for an analytics code. So we just type in UA dash. And we can see here it's given us 4 results. And one of them is really close right here at the top. So it's showing us UA-112340, you know, and on and on. So this is what we're looking for. This is a Google Analytics code here in the source code of the page. And one of the things you want to do is, if there's multiple results, is you just want to make sure you look at all of them, because sometimes you actually get more than one. And it looks like these are all the same ID. They're just placed in different parts of the page, which is totally normal to see. So we've got a Google Analytics ID. We know this website is using Google Analytics. Okay, great. We also want to look for that publisher ID. And I'll tell you, I put a higher priority on the publisher ID, because that's where money is taking place. If they are running ads and they're doing Google AdSense, then they're more likely to take the publisher ID very seriously and make sure that it's the right one, because if they put somebody else's on the website, that person gets all their ad money, okay? So the publisher ID of the two of them is much more interesting to me. So in this case, we do pub dash, and we get a result here at the top. And so there's one, that's great. But we also have, it tells us there are 6 results. And I'm telling you, it is often the case that there is more than one publisher ID on a website. And I'm going to explain to you why in one second. So this first one here, we can remember it starts 155. What's the next one? 0547. So we know there are 2 different publisher IDs on this website. And here's where you want to understand the difference. So let's go back up to the first one. And here he is. What I can see up here, and this is something you'll get used to looking at, is that this website is hosted on blogger.com, which is a Google platform. And so we can see here that the name of this particular publisher ID is Google AdSense platform account. So what's going on here is that because this website is hosted on Google's Blogger platform, Google's own publisher ID for Blogger is shown on the website, okay? That's not interesting to us because every website hosted on Blogger is going to have that AdSense ID. And if you actually go and search that in the tools I'll show you, you will get a result telling you, oh, hundreds of thousands of websites use this same ID. And that's because they're all on Blogger. So we want to discard that one. When you see that information about Google AdSense platform account, ignore it. And we like this other one here, pub 05477, and on we go. So we just simply want to copy this because we're going to go and we're going to search it. And I'm going to show you a few tools for doing that. Again, everything I'm showing you is here in the slides. So let's do Spy on Web, where all we have to do is just paste in the publisher ID. And here it tells us that it has seen 3 websites that have had this publisher ID in its source code. So websites like Spy on Web are constantly scanning websites, and they're capturing that data and then making that available for us to be able to do searches on. And so in this case, they're saying AnglicanChurchPH.blogspot.com, so another blogger site for an Anglican church in the Philippines. We love quotes.tumblr.com, and then also maybe the most interesting one, perhaps, Mobile Photography PH. So 2 of the 3 do indicate that they are Philippines or were Philippines websites. We don't know if they're still active. We don't know if they still have the same publisher ID, which is why you always want to manually visit the website and look at the source code and make sure it's still there. Don't just rely on the tools. Again, I told you I'd emphasize it. Here I am emphasizing it again. And so that's a result here for Spy on Web. What if we go to DNSlytics and we put the same thing in? For some reason, my screen is very small on that. There we go, that's better. Okay, so we drop it in, we do a search, and it's telling us that it found 19 domains. But because we're cheap and we are using the free version, it's only showing us 10. That's still a pretty good start. I'm happy with 10. What do we see here? Oh, our friends. Remember newsspy.net? Remember there was a Facebook page that was sharing content from the dailycentury.net consistently, and it had the same logo? Well, now we know that not only does the newsspy.net's Facebook page consistently post content from the Daily Century, but newsspy.net and the Daily Century appear to be using the exact same Google publisher ID. The money from the Google ads on both of these websites is going into the same account. So that is a good example of us starting to stack our evidence, right? That's why we do all these things. We want to see if we can prove network and prove who's behind it. And so there's a whole bunch of other sites here, not just Food PH, TFNpress.com. There's the Daily Century, obviously. And so it's giving us this information here where we're starting to see these connections between these websites. And remember, all we did was we visited the site, we viewed the source, we did a find on the page for those magic letter combinations, in this case, PUB dash. And then once we found that ID, we just went and searched on these tools to start finding websites. And again, I want to emphasize that with the new spy.net, you don't just take the tool's word for it. You visit the site, a pretty similar template, right? Let's open an article page and let's do the same thing again, just to make sure that this tool is correct and this publisher ID is here. So I've got my source open. I'm searching PUB dash. We've got we've got a couple of different ones here. And so this one again is our Google AdSense platform account. So we want to ignore the 1551. But here's the 05477. And what was the one we searched? 05477. So we have now manually confirmed that the new spy.net has the same publisher ID as the Daily Sentry. Both of these sites, the money from their Google ads are going into the same account. That is a reasonably strong connection between the two of them. We would obviously want to discover more, but already we went from just one website at the Daily Sentry to now having a list of around 20 in total that may all be connected or have been connected in the past. And we did that just by knowing to look for a Google AdSense ID in there, okay? So one of the things that I just want to emphasize is that even when a website is no longer active, if it has been archived by the Wayback Machine, which I'm gonna just detail some stuff about that in a second, you can actually still do this method for an archived website. So one of the results, if you remember, was a website called mobilephotographyph.com. When I visited that website, it told me that the website was dead, but because I have the Wayback Machine extension installed, it notified me immediately that I could actually see the archived version of that website and be able to do that. And so, if we pull up the archived version, we see this, from a few years back, and that's fine. It's a page and some of the images don't load, but we don't care about images. We care about the source code. And all you have to do is the same thing. You do view source, you do pub dash on that page, and look at this. In an archived version of mobilephotographyph.com, we can see that back in 2016, they had this advertising ID from Google AdSense there. And we were able to confirm that by knowing the method and by knowing that it still works when you go to the Wayback Machine. And so not only are we connecting existing active websites together, but we now have the power to reach back into the past and pull a website that is no longer online into this same network. It's magical. Okay, the last one I want to show you is a site called BuiltWith, which is super helpful. You can actually put the domain name, thedailysentry.net, into BuiltWith. You click on the relationship profile menu here. BuiltWith has a lot of options, and I encourage you to become familiar with it. But we're interested in relationship profile, and BuiltWith will actually extract a bunch of different tags here, not just the Google AdSense and analytics tags, but it's extracted one from a network from Taboola. And then you can see here that, on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, it has said which websites it has seen connected. And we see some overlap here, don't we? We see not just Food PH, we see TFN Press. In terms of, the one we were just looking at before, it's not on here, but that's why we use multiple tools. We compare and contrast, and pretty soon we go from having one website to having more than 20 that all share some connections and that we can go and verify. And this is where basically you have to remember the method that we have gone through to get to this point. We started very simple. We visited websites. We looked at content. We did who is searches. You remember all the methods we've gone through? Well, when we get to this point where we start with the Daily Sentry, but all of a sudden now we've got all these websites that we think might be connected, you have to repeat the whole process for every single one of those websites. You have to visit them. You have to analyze the content. You should do who is searches. You should look at the server it's hosted on. You should look at the engagement and the Facebook pages connected. And as you repeat this method, you can build the case and build the connections. And so what I'm showing you is something that I have to do sometimes, 5, 10, 50, 20 times a day. if I'm onto something that seems like a good sized network, I go through this and I repeat and I repeat and I repeat, and I build a spreadsheet and I note the things that are similar between all these websites. And so as you become familiar with this method and approach and the way of thinking about it, it starts to become something that you are just going to repeat again and again and again. And so that's why I really encourage you to bookmark the slides and to follow through this and to practice it on some things for your own work. All right, so remember we did our engagement analysis. We've now learned how to connect websites together. We learned some basics about Google AdSense as well, which is going to help us in our next section. And we also understood a little bit about the Wayback Machine. And I just wanted to emphasize the Wayback Machine here. The browser extension recently got a redesign, and it's wonderful. It's really, really good. So please install it. And obviously you can look back on a website on their website. But here's the extension. This is what it looks like when you open it. It enables you to instantly save a page right away. You don't have to leave the website you're on and go to the Wayback Machine. You can hit Save Page Now and it saves it. If that web page has already been archived, you can instantly click a button and go view that archived page. So that's just a big time saver. And when you're doing fact checking or other work and you're going through a lot of articles, to be able to just click and save it right away is huge. It saves you time as you do things. And I have a couple tips here that's in the slides you can review later. But number one, you can create a free account at the Wayback Machine's website. And if you do that, and then you sign in to the extension, it will keep every page that you have personally saved in your own personal archive. So it's super helpful because you can go back and look and, oh, I saved a page last week. What was it? And it will be there for you. All right. You should choose the settings and decide, some of the preferences you want. They've got some great options there that you can see here. I've highlighted a couple that you may want to do. If you do have an account, you should definitely click the button here to save to my web archive, because that's where you will get your personal archive of everything you're saving. And so just a few tips that I wanted you to be aware of, but I really emphasize, sign in, create an account, install the extension, use it. Super helpful, super good. And one other tool I want to emphasize also is, so this is another Chrome extension. It's the Web Monitor, Distill Web Monitor. You're able to pick a web page or even a specific section of a web page, and you're able to actually go in and just go in and have it notify you anytime that web page is updated. So if you are watching to see if they put something new on a web page, maybe it's a government website or somewhere else, and instead of having to go back and check it every day, you just set this monitor and it will notify you in your web browser when they've actually updated. Okay, when we put in the sort of, information, in this case, it could be let's go to this one here, the publisher ID. So for example, in this case, we put in the publisher ID PUB-05477 on. Somewhere is saying, okay, so it's telling us there are 3 domains that are connected. What does that mean that they're connected? And in this case, what it's saying is that this tool, Spy on Web, at some point in time has seen this exact same publisher ID, PUB-05477, on these 3 websites. So they are connected because in the source code of these other websites, at some point in time, they have the exact same unique ID present. And so that is a good hint that, they may have been owned by the same people. They may still be owned by the same people. And so the connection is about this unique ID being present in the source code of these websites. And, when we go to Built With here, on this right-hand side, what Built With is saying is that these websites here have, one of these IDs on this side. They've got the UA ID, they've got the pub ID, they've got one from Taboola, another ad network. And they're saying that, listen, these connected websites have at least one of these shared IDs in them. So that is what they're saying. And obviously, as I emphasized, it's really important to go and confirm this yourself. and to see that in the source code, the ID is still there because, with built with, it's got categories there of first detected and last detected. So for example, if we look at, the Taboola ID, they detected it in June of 2020, and then they didn't see it until September of 2020. So that one may not actually be active and interesting anymore. And we would need to go and visit websites and see if that ID is actually there in the source code. So that's the core of it. Connected because they have the same ID either now or sometime in the past. And we obviously want to go and deal with that manually. Okay, so I see a question here also. What if the revenue source is not from ads? Would spy on web or other tools show connections? Very good question. So if you remember, I showed you two different codes that we want to look for. So one of them is the pub ID, which is Google AdSense. And you're right, like not every website has ads on it. In some cases, maybe they had ads on it, and then maybe they got kicked out because they were publishing such crazy stuff, right? So what would be the other ways of connecting them together? Well, one of them is the Google Analytics ID, which is completely unconnected from ads. Google Analytics is the tool that you use to measure the traffic on your website. It's a free tool. It has a lot of features, and a lot of people use Google Analytics because of that. So yes, Spy on Web and these other ones do look for Google Analytics. If you actually look on this slide that I have open right here from the Built With page, you can see that the second ID is AT-RA and then a bunch of numbers and letters. That's for a plugin called Add, I think it's called something like Add This, which is actually like a social plugin. And so that's an example where it has nothing to do with advertising, but there is a unique ID associated with it. And so sites like Built With and some others will look beyond just advertising IDs and find you analytics IDs or other types as well. So that you can sometimes get lucky with that. If they don't care about ads, there can still be some way to do connections. All right, another question here. When I use these tools, I sometimes find that they get outdated and no longer work. Absolutely. And you said, for example, domain big data doesn't seem to work anymore. This is true for tools used to analyze Twitter. Do I find this as a problem? Yes, it's absolutely a problem. Because I actually used to use domain big data all the time in workshops because it was a great free domain search tool. And I had to remove it just in the past few months because domain big data just died. And you're talking about Twitter tools. I'm going to guess that maybe you're talking about a really great set of Twitter tools called TweetBeaver, which recently died as well. And so this kind of goes back to one of the key messages that I said I would probably emphasize a lot, which is, tools can be helpful. They can assist us. They can give us information that's useful, but they don't, we can't purely rely on tools. And there's a few reasons for that. One of them is tools don't actually give us a lot of context. Tools don't necessarily tell us how to fit information together. That's where the mind and how we approach this work comes in. So that's one failing of tools. But the second is really well highlighted by your question, which is that tools will always come and go. You may see a great tool and it may be useful, and then 3 months later, it's dead because it was some random person who built it and got tired of maintaining it. Or it's dead because the social network decided to turn off the data that it was using. So this is life. This is part of the world of investigating the digital, is that tools come and go, and we can never be purely relying on tools. We have to be creative. We have to be persistent. And of course, we can't just only use tools. We also need to find sources and documents and other things. So thank you for that question, because it's something that I really try to emphasize. And it's important for people to know, I'm showing you tools today. I'll show you more tools tomorrow. But it's also about the method, because you have to find other ways to get the information. The tools will come and the tools will go. Thank you for that question. All right. how to deal with the situation where a website uses a CDN service. So in this case, what you have is services that people will pay for in some cases to protect their website against certain types of online attacks that can sort of bring a website offline. And so the reason that this question is being asked is that if you use one of these services, so there's a content delivery network service, there's also a really popular service called Cloudflare, where basically, they're enabling you to load the content for your website in a way that's ensuring your website doesn't crash or get attacked and go down. And when you use these services, it tends to kind of obscure some of the technical details. For example, the IP address of your server. If you use one of these services, it's typically not possible in a who is search to see the actual original IP address for a website. You will see the IP address that is used by the CDN service. So this is kind of similar in a way to paying for privacy on a domain name registration. You'll see something, but it's not actually the information that is, the true information behind it. So how do we deal with it? Honestly, for the most part, it's just kind of a dead end. If somebody is using Cloudflare, they're going to have a specific kind of Cloudflare ID, and you will probably not be able to see the IP behind it. And so when we hit a wall, when we hit a barrier, we have to move around it. We have to find another approach. And this is actually something that I'm going to give you some strategies for around social media accounts tomorrow. But when we're talking about websites, what would be some alternate approaches? Well, if we're not able to connect a website together through its IP address, is there information in the whois record? If that's private, can we connect a website together using Google AdSense or Google Analytics codes? Can we connect a website together through companies or other entities listed in its privacy policy? So, there isn't a great, perfect technical solution for that. The solution is to be creative and to think of other avenues and ways of getting the information. Okay, so, and Summer just following up on her question, when we talk about built with, connected means the UA or the pub are the same. Yeah, that's right. It means that they have the same UA ID, the same pub ID in that same website. So if you look in the source code of these other websites, you should be able to find an overlapping ID, unless that ID has changed over time, which again, just to emphasize why you want to do the manual check. Like, you don't want to just go to built with tells you, oh, these 3 other websites have the exact same pub ID. And then write your article and say it's connected by pub ID with these 3 other websites. You need to visit all of the websites. You need to view the source code of all the websites, and you need to know that the publisher ID is the same on all 3 websites. So built with, or DNSlytics, is giving you a direction. It's giving you good information. But of course, we verify information. We don't just take what the tool tells us, we confirm it manually. Okay, oh yes, and there was a question, thank you for the translation. Why could AdSense, as a Google ad tool, be a digital investigation tool? And the reason for that, which I'm gonna actually, after we take our little break, that I'm gonna expand on, the reason that AdSense, the Google Ad Network, is a digital investigation tool is that it can be a very, very useful way to connect websites together. And on top of that, I'm going to give you a little hint to what's coming in the next section. On top of that, it may actually even give you a person's name or a company name. So sometimes you strike out on a whois search, they pay for privacy, everything is terrible, you want to cry, you want to go home. But then all of a sudden, you know how to do more with investigating digital ads, and you might get a person's name and you might get a company name, and then the heavens open up and there's rainbows everywhere, and you just want to run in the street screaming how wonderful the world is. These are the things that I'm going to give to you, just happiness and joy for the rest of your lives in digital investigations. Okay, so it'll be interesting to see how much sillier I get the later we get into the evening, my time. I have 2 kids. I usually get up at like 6 a.m. So we're going to see how out of it I get. All right. So it looks like we've gone through the questions here. It's beautiful because we're staying right on time. And so we're going to take a break and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about investigating digital ads. And I'm not faking my excitement. This is how much of a nerd I am. I absolutely love talking about investigating ads because it's an area where journalists are just not spending a lot of time and attention. And if I can give you something tonight, or today I should say, that helps you on the path to just even understanding digital ads better, this is good. This is a good thing. Okay.